Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. You have your host, Lauren, and in today's episode, I have an amazing guest here with me. Her name is Stephanie. She is the Boundaries Babe. Now, Stephanie, kind of tell us a little bit about where you started. How did you come up with everything that you're doing now? Kind of just tell us a little bit about your story.
Thank you for having me. It's as everybody's story, right? It's the long, twisty road. So the short version, kind of condensed, is I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. So I grew up in a very, if you're not familiar with that religion, very fundamental Christian religion with some kind of cult like mentalities. And so at 20, well, I got married at 18, had my first child at 19. And by the time I was 22, was divorced with two kids and had left the religion. And in leaving the religion, it was really, I cut myself off from family, friends, community, and I didn't know anything outside of that. So I had to kind of find my way also while having two, my daughter was 6 weeks old, like very, very small children. So 6 weeks and 2.5. Um, and then I came out at 27 and basically had between 22 and 27 and then some of the stuff with my immediate family, and then went through the whole process again because that is not accepted in that religion. And at the time I was with a partner who was very upset about it and added me to, I was on the PTA, added me to the PTA, added me to everybody. I was asked to step down from the PTA at the time. So really, again, lost community, lost friends, and just had to kind of find my way again. And at that point, I had three kids. So I was a very young mother with three kids. And at that time I was in aviation sales and I just didn't know what else to do, right? So I continued in that until it kind of unraveled, which happened through me coming out as well. So it was just an interesting like time in my life because I was so young and still trying to figure out who I was, also trying to raise kids and being like going through these changes where people just couldn't accept what wasn't considered the norm. Um,
Right.
so fast forward to I end up, a single mom raising my kids, end up with a partner. He has two kids. So kind of go back and forth, trying to still figure out who I am. So I'm raising five kids now from four different parenting plans. Things are like crazy town, right? I'm a brand new manager at Starbucks. And I was like, I have to like really figure out some systems because, otherwise like we're not going to have groceries and kids aren't going to get where they need to go. So really figured out at that point like how to really systemize our home life and set things up. So things as basic as like each kid had their own color of literally everything: towel, plate, cup, sheets, the whole 9 yards. So I knew whose was what and who didn't do what chore and all. I got real like crazy town about it. And then, in 2019, I was in the restaurant management industry, and my kids were all out of the house at that point, and really disliked where I was at in my career. Really disliked the whole concept of working until you retire and then living your life after you retire. And my youngest had attempted suicide twice in that year. My dad had been in and out of the hospital. Um, and I basically just had a meltdown. And I was like, this isn't how I want to live my life. And so quit my job. My dad was super stable, had gotten out of the hospital. His health was fine. My son was stable. His health was fine. At that point, I was in a fairly new relationship with my current girlfriend. And I was like, I just want to go travel. Like, I just want to figure this out and go travel with my life. And she's like, yeah, let's do it. Packed everything up, put it in 6 boxes, got rid of everything else, took off to travel, and then COVID. So came, came back to Seattle for that time period and decided, what do I want to do? What do I really want to do? Because the way we were traveling was really hard at the time. We didn't know anything about it. So we were being hosted and having to move like every 2 days. It was super, again, chaotic. And I was like, this isn't what I want in my life. So I went back to school, got my holistic health coaching degree. Love holistic health coaching, love coaching, dislike one-on-one coaching a lot. And so I really kind of, for the last probably 2 years, really tried to figure out what do I want to do, how do I want to do it, got together with a business partner, amicably broke up with that business partner in February of this year. We're still friends. And so I was like, you know what? What I love and what fires me up and what I really like, my girlfriend and I were out and we'd had like 4 glasses of wine. And I was like, giving women a voice is really what's important to me. And what has made me who I am is having really strong boundaries. I come from a family that's very traditional, very Texan, very proud. And they just really are all about the oldest daughter, which I happen to be, martyrs herself and takes care of the family and doesn't have a life, right? And that's what my aunt is doing currently for my dad. Um, and I just was like, that's not, no, no, I don't want to do that. I don't have to do that. And in the restaurant industry, which has all of the isms, right? Sexism, ageism, race, all of it, I was always that voice that stepped and said, this is not okay. And you think it's not, you don't need to be sexually harassed. You don't need to have a fear of retaliation or fear of losing your job. And I was like, that's where I really get, I'm passionate about it. So therefore the Boundaries Babe was born. And I do small group coaching, I do a membership. And that's kind of how I came to be where I am currently. And I love it. And I think it's something that lights me up. And I think it's something that, women need to stop apologizing and stop playing small and stop not taking up space in the room.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I love I was going to say, I love your story. And I love the way that the two things that had stood out to me is when you said busy moms and like that chaos. So obviously you've lived through that chaos. And it seems like, from what I can hear and see, that you are really good at helping. Maybe this is not something that you do, but helping people or helping moms like clear out that chaos to kind of find their passion in their life. And it's literally what it seems like you just explained in a
Yeah.
very short time. So, and I know the listeners here, there's a lot, the huge network. I have a huge network of busy moms because I'm a busy mom, a single mom. So, and I feel like half of my life sometimes is chaos, even though I am an entrepreneur and I do have this amazing business that I love. I also resonate when you say about giving women that voice. It's basically the mission behind here on this podcast that I decided, this is what I want for myself. I want this, obviously listening to the universe of what I needed to do, like a podcast. It's kind of like funny how it's like the podcast. Okay, the podcast. What am I supposed to do on podcast? Like, what do you want? What am I supposed to do? Like, what is the mission here? And it's like, okay, so season one was about thinking that I thought I was doing how I was going the right way, and it's like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. And it's like that's how kind of like season two is born because it's like this is how it's like pivoting, right? It's like those patterns of like, well, I got to figure this out. And then it's like, no, you don't have to figure anything out. So I love that you had, said that because I feel like a lot of people, especially right now, it's just the world is very chaotic and it's like there's so much going on. And it's like, especially moms being, even, you have to be, if you're a single mom, you have to do both parts, right? You have to be there for your kids, you got to be there for yourself, you got to be the other parent. It's like it can be messy. And um with that being said, what is so kind of with your group coaching, what does it look like? Can you kind of paint a picture for the listeners on like if this resonates with somebody, what would be kind of like, is there a process that you do? Or you said system, which I love because, and for me, I'm all about systems. I like things to be automated, especially in my personal life, along with my daughter, because my daughter will be 4. So as you know, toddlers, she'll be 4 in a week, I think, week and a half. Yeah. 2 days before Christmas. So, it's hard. Like I have to say, it's been getting harder. And it's like, those daily routines, she's very routine. And it's like understanding that she needs to have a routine. And I also need a routine, but her routine could be different. So what kind of like easy system that you talk about that you like help your clients with?
Yeah, so I do work with busy moms. That's what I attract because I understand it, right? And
Yeah.
I also work with women, just who want to really work on their voice. Um, I really keep it simple because it's first of all, it's a mindset thing, right? It's stepping out of the forest, right, so that you can see the whole forest instead of just seeing one tree right in front of you. And it's hard to do that when you're in the throes of kids needing you. I mean, you're a mom, you know all the things. They have to be out of class. They are hungry. You need to make sure you have a snack. You know, do they brush their teeth? Do you make the dentist appointment? And run a business, especially if you are running a business as well, right? And that's so, or working outside the home. So I keep it really simple. So it's really mindset work. And in the mindset, the course itself, the membership, it's once a month coaching. If you choose to come into that, there's replays available, obviously. I keep it everything really as succinct as possible. I try to keep everything under 30 minutes because moms are busy. However, I go up to an hour and a half if people have questions or if it's really like information that is, I feel so powerful. But I do all of my, especially if I do a replay, I do like pause and like go do this now, right? Instead of like listening and never implementing, because a lot of it is implementation, as we all know, especially as entrepreneurs. Um, and then I do a workbook. So it's a focus every month that has to do around mindset, and then a workbook that helps you think about how do I want my life to look? Because I don't know how old you are, but I just turned 50 this year. My mom, right, it's her job was to be a stay-at-home mom. She worked some outside of the home. And then when the kids are out of the house, that generation was like, now what do I do? What's my purpose? Right. And I think we've changed, our generation's changed that some. And this younger generation for sure is viewing relationships in the world very differently. But how do you remember that you are a woman, you're a partner, you have passions, you have hobbies, and so really remembering who you are at your core and how do you want your life to look. And each family is unique, each family is individual, each person is unique, so one system doesn't work for every single person. So in the membership, I really do more of here's some mindset that you can think about what you want to do, and then here's systems. I have a weekly email that goes out on Tuesdays. It's 5 under 5, so it's 5 super quick tips that you can do in under 5 minutes. One's on relationship. It could be on a cooking thing, an organization, decluttering. I do talk a lot about systems. You say, your 4-year-old needs a routine. Absolutely. Like one of the best things we can give for our kids is independence, right? Like one of the systems I set up with my kids was the refrigerator had labeled bins in it. And it was like, this is, you take one of each of these things for lunches. So you take like, these are your snacks and you can have, 2 total or whatever the thing was, so that I didn't have to make their snack. I didn't have to make their lunches. They could go do that because it's too much, right?
Yeah.
Um, so those are the kinds of things that I help with, the strategic, like actual tangible, here's ways that you can simplify your life and your routines. And then a big piece of it is really just mindset work and thinking differently about how you approach your day, your business, your family, yourself, your own self-care, not putting yourself last.
Awesome. Yeah. I was going to say the one thing that my daughter has, I guess it's because I'm very independent. So it actually just kind of, I don't necessarily feel like, I don't know if I had the time to do it. So it's like she always wanted to do that anyway. So she wanted to get her. Now, of course, she's not climbing on the counter to get a snack. Like I will get that. But I
Yeah.
had put snacks where she could get them herself. And at the point that I had to lock the cabinet at that point, because then she was getting them all the time. But when she asks for things too, I've noticed that she will wait if I'm doing something. She'll wait, like she'll have that patience, which I never sometimes, not all the time, but she'll have that patience to wait to knowing that I'm doing something, I'll get it, or I'll say, I'll get it in a second for you, or, you can get it yourself. And if she could get it herself, she would. So I love that. And that, yes, I definitely can resonate that she wants independence, or if I show her how to do it or she doesn't know how to do it, I show her in a way that, like, putting her clothes on, she did this, she wanted to do this very early on, so it's like tag in the back. That's what I said for undies, tag in the back. Sometimes she puts it on backwards. It's okay, I will fix it. But
Yeah.
same thing with her shoes, she really wanted to do it herself, so I just kind of give her, and she says it, I think I hear her sometimes in her room saying it, tag in the back. And it's very cute, but it's the things that I know that helped me when I was a kid, or I learned from, the amazing things I learned from, my parents. I didn't learn everything amazing from them. So I had to also reparent myself, and I still am, now currently. So yeah, I love systems, and I think systems make things just so much easier. Like, I feel like it doesn't matter if you like systems or not. I feel like if you have a system, that whatever system works for your family, it does reduce a lot of stress. I feel like it,
100%.
or can. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and it's interesting because I hear a lot of resistance from people who, especially like aren't type A personalities, right? I don't like routines. I don't like systems. Here's the big news: you have a system and you have a routine.
Right.
Is it working for you? Right? If you're still in that like chaotic state, it's not working for you, but you have one. There's a certain the top five things that you do all of the time in the same scenario. It just is that an effective system or is it an ineffective system? And oftentimes we just have ineffective systems. And a lot of times we get in our own way, right? Moms and women we get in the way. We do the laundry because it has to be done a certain way. Who cares? Like,
Right.
right? Like, okay, don't touch my clothes, right? Like,
Right.
I'll wash my clothes, but who cares if the towels aren't folded exactly right? And that was a lesson I had to learn. Like, I'm super, type A perfectionist, and I was like, the towels have to be folded this way and on the shelf this way. And I just got to a point where I was like, I just don't. I mean, I actually ended up in the hospital with burnout because, which I didn't know what it was. I had never had a migraine. It was this horrific experience, all because I refused to give up any of that control. That just doesn't matter. Like, those aren't important things that matter at the end of the day. Nobody cares. Nobody went to your house and said, "Ooh, she doesn't fold her towels right."
Right. Yeah. Speaking about, I was gonna say, I would love for you to speak about burnout. I feel like a lot of I've also went through similar symptoms about burnout too a couple years ago. And when you speak about control, I didn't realize that um, some of the listeners might get triggered by this, but I feel like a lot of people that are type A or have that control, and it's because of maybe from childhood, obviously it's coming from childhood, of having these high expectations, like your parents having high expectations. And I realized that, that's not their fault. They just did the best that they could. But when it comes to burnout, we're all designed separately. I mean, for me, it was understanding my human design. But for you, what is one of the things, like if you're working with a client, what is like one of the things that you would walk them through to like how do they understand what is in alignment? Like if they're in this chaotic stage and they don't know what they like, what they don't like, or what's working, what's not, like how do you get to them to a place of getting very clear with what they desire?
Yeah. So the first thing we do is we talk about core values. And I think core values are just who you are at the core of your being
Right.
and probably something you were born with and things that are intrinsically important to you. Right. And so I find that there's a common thread. Women who have really strong family and community core values, as a general rule, take on far more than women who that's not their core value, right?
Right.
Nothing wrong with that. There's zero judgment. Um, but they need a different type of system and different coaching because they're givers. They're always going to all even when they are running on less than empty, they're going to give. They're going to stay up till 2 a.m. baking the cookies for the church bake sale. They're going to run carpool. They're going to do all of the things to the detriment of their own business and health and sometimes the detriment of their family, right? So we get to the bottom of like what your true core values are, and then filtering everything through your core values. Because the thing is that you cannot say yes to everything. If you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so realizing, and that's where the mindset piece comes in, right? So realizing if I say yes, let's say as an example, I use the example of family dinner time. Let's say family dinner time is super important to you. You want to raise your kids sitting down at the table having family dinner. Dinner's at 6 o'clock every single night. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you get a call from the head of the PTA, and the phone tree person has the flu and can't do the phone tree. Could you please do it? It has to be done by 7 o'clock tonight. If you say yes to that, you're now saying no to family dinner because you're on the phone during family dinner, right? So now you've gone against who you are and your core value, which feels out of alignment, even though we may not know what that is or may not know how it feels yet. You're out of alignment and you're piling on guilt and shame because now you've said no to something that's super important to you, you feel guilty about it. You made a promise that you broke into yourself and to your family. And you know how kids are about promises. Can't break a promise to a kid.
Yes.
so,
Yes.
so like it starts this snowball effect. And then you stay in that guilt and shame sometimes for an hour, sometimes for days. And the more yeses you say to things that are against your core values, the more the guilt and shame piles on, and the more you get into that state of deprivation and lack. And then that's where we hit burnout. We stop taking care of ourselves because we feel already bad about already giving that up. So we're not going to go work out because we're going to make this up. We're going to make up the family dinner by taking them to donuts in the morning. So now we've skipped our morning workout and we've fed our body sugar. Like it just starts a cycle, and um, it's hard to break because just like the forest, it's hard to see when you're in it. And you're just trying to climb out of this hole that you dug, but the more you climb, the deeper the hole gets. And so really just sitting and learning, like, how do I feel in this? Not saying yes right away, taking space, saying, you know what, let me check my calendar. Because sometimes our gut reaction, especially as a giver, is yes, always. You always want to be helpful. And as women, we're taught that in society, be helpful, be
Yeah.
polite. Sometimes just giving that space of like, let me check my calendar gives you the space to be like, you know what, I can't, or I don't want to. And that is an okay answer. You can say it kindly. You can offer another solution, right? But you don't have to take it all on, and it will get done. That's the other, I think that's the biggest learning lesson I had to learn is if I don't take it on, it will still get done. It may not get done the way I want, and that's in anything, right? The cookies will get baked to the bake sale, the carpool will happen, it will all
Yeah.
get done. And
Yeah.
there's other people who sometimes who are waiting to do it. There may be somebody who has, a teenager that's missing that community piece, and that teenager doesn't need them quite the same way. And they'd love to bake the cookies and it's not going to stress them out. Or their kids at soccer practice and they're fine with it, right? But we take it on because we think we have to, and we just don't have to.
Yes. Yeah, I love that you said that because I feel like so my mind's like, yes, this is literally how it is for me too. Cause I'm a giver. So I know that I always wanted to say yes until I realized that like, why am I saying yes to things that aren't aligned with me anymore? Like why I don't even want to be here. And it's like my energy, people can see that, feel that. And it's just like, why am I doing this to everybody else around me and doing this to myself? So yeah, and I would always have shame and guilt. And I always say this to people, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can understand this too, or they can have this guilt. It comes around the holidays too. It helps.
Yes.
Like it is like, and when you say boundaries, I'm like, gosh, it lately has been even for my own personal life. I feel like, you know, when I say no, I can feel the other person like, wow, like it's validating for the other person. This is like family members or just like not necessarily like in my business. But when I'm saying different things to family members, it's like that's that resistance that they're just like, normally Lauren does this, or normally I used to do this, or whatever it is. And it's just like now she's saying no, and it's just like, but why? And it's
Yeah.
like sometimes I feel like I need to explain myself, and sometimes I'm like, because I just don't feel like it. And it's like that feeling that does not feel good. I know, and most people, I know from when I started my healing journey, boundary, I didn't even know what a boundary was. It was never talked about. I'm like, what's a boundary? Like I had to educate, like I had to learn what a boundary is, and then how to place, healthy boundaries, not those boundaries that you're just placing all around you to like keep yourself enclosed, right?
Yes.
So when you speak about boundaries, when somebody, so like if somebody were to ask this question, what advice could you give to them, that somebody that is this, let me give you like a little like scenario. So like my client, she had a really huge like her family dynamic is that empath narcissistic pattern. And what she has noticed is since she's placed the boundary that, she has her own family now, she has, husband and her kids. And what has happened is she gave me the story and just wanted advice. So I would love to have your advice too. Um, is she said that the mother is of the like of her husband has stopped coming to family functions and treats her like crap. So she basically they have their own tradition, And she basically had started to, now she's not coming, that they have to do a separate thing. And she was like, I don't know what to do. Like, what do I say to my husband? What do I help him say? Because he, being in that dynamic, right, is just going to do what his mom says. But it's now creating like that, the energy dynamic between her and her husband. She was like, I need advice. And like, what kind of boundary can I place, with him and the mom to protect myself? And, I gave her my advice, but I would love to hear, like, what advice would you give, to somebody in that situation?
Yeah, so this is, and that's an interesting. It's interesting that you bring that up because there's your own personal, like, right, your own person, and then when you bring in other family, you bring in a partner, and you bring in children. Now you've got a family dynamic, and it's not just you anymore, right?
Right.
There's your own boundaries, and then there are the boundaries that protect your family. And so, the first thing that I encourage families to do in that situation, or women to do with their families, is really sit down and talk about, like, I mean, we're in the throes of the holiday now, so it's a little bit harder. But like for
Right.
next year, right? Like maybe after the holiday, like New Year's Eve or whatever, right? Make that a tradition where we say, what did we love about this holiday? What are the things we want to keep for next year? Because you're in the raw new feelings of it, right? What
Mhm.
did we not love? What was really stressful? What caused drama and chaos and fighting? What caused us to be really stressed? What caused the kids to have meltdowns? And do we want to do that next year, or can we do that in a different way? I would say, I would assume that they're having to go to the mother-in-law's
Mhm.
house.
Yeah.
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 I mean, honestly, like the boundary could just be as simple as, so for me, I didn't grow up with holidays, but I've been with partners who've had, their families have had holidays, right? It makes it
Yeah.
really easy when you don't have to split time.
Yeah.
However, being with somebody who also had kids, and then there, like, it becomes much more convoluted. So we just started doing like one activity. This is the activity we've chosen for our family as a year, and anybody is welcome to join. But that's our family activity, and short of that, like we'll decide if we're going to go to X's house, so and so's house for dinner. But we do, like, we're now a family, and these are our holiday traditions. But we've opened this one thing up. It's some fun thing. We have Snowflake Lane in Seattle, so like it's a big fun activity for all the kids, and then everybody can grab hot chocolate. We can do dinner if we want to do dinner. It doesn't have to be on the actual holiday. It goes for like the whole month.
Yeah.
Um, everybody's welcome to come, and it's a fun, memorable experience. And part of how I would encourage your client, and any woman, honestly, is we have found that when we overstress the kids, they're on the kids, right? We overstress the kids, then they have a really hard time, and they're not having fun. And I don't want them to have those memories when they grow up. I want them to have
Right.
really fun memories of doing things with their grandparents and their aunts and uncles. And this is something that we've chosen to do because it's a fun activity. And then it's on them, and they may not come the first year or two. If you hold true to
Yeah.
it, they'll show up.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty much what my answer was too, with, because I deal with, me and my daughter's father are not together. So we have, shared holidays. So
Yeah.
some, like, it's flipping back and forth. And the holidays that I do have her, we at least for Christmas, we get to split it, and her birthday just being 2 days before Christmas kind of makes it hard sometimes. So I just made sure that I completely separated. I had a party for here, like, for her here, and then, he can do, so it's kind of like, she gets two of everything, and I want to make sure that she doesn't, the fortunate part is she never remembers us together, because I had left, 6 weeks when she was very, very young, like 6 weeks, I think, or, like, it was very, very young when I, like, she doesn't remember. She doesn't ever remember seeing us together. So she just remembers, she's asking questions now. So she's like, do I get two of everything? And that's pretty much what I kind of right now, not trying to explain more to her, but right now it's like, you get to have it at daddy's and you get to have it at mommy's. And it's like, that I don't know what he does with her, but I just kind of, so she can feel like, okay, because I never really want the dynamic of her being the problem, and I know I can always can just control what I can do, but I know that kids, they start to realize when the adults, I realized that just seeing dynamic of just different people in my life that I know that are going through this very huge shift in, if their family dynamic, that it's the adults with the problem, and then the kids are suffering. And I'm just like, and
Yeah.
hear me, I'm like, I don't want to get in this, but like, you do know that you guys are the ones with the issues, and these kids are suffering,
Yeah.
and it's like, when can the adults see? And obviously that comes with self-awareness, right? But when can the adults come see that they only have so many years, they only have these childhood memories. And I feel like I'm the voice of the kids sometimes, because I'm like, you guys are fighting for what reason,
Yeah.
so it's like, well, I can't, like, I always believe I love just being like with like my little cousins, or just the little, the little generation, because it's now not about us, it's about them. And yeah, I definitely love that advice. And I feel like, that what she kind of was going through, I feel like she felt like she was alone. And I was like, no, I'm not personally going through it, but I'm watching somebody else that I truly love go through it. And I'm trying to give the best advice I can. And, you need boundaries. And for somebody like, in my generation, they're not, it's like we weren't allowed to have boundaries. We didn't even know what
100%.
they were. And it's like, now it's like, oh, I can say no, and not, and because they're mad at me for saying no, that's not about me, that's about them. So yeah, I
So true.
love that advice. So the last question that I have for you is, when people are starting on this self-care journey, or like time management, what are a few actionable steps that somebody can take, like today, listening to this, to make a positive change in their life?
Oh, I love this question. So the first thing I say is, if you are in a state of overwhelm, do a brain dump, right? Just pull out a piece of paper and write down literally every single thought that pops into your mind. It doesn't matter what it is. And then I love color, like I love markers and pens and all that stuff. So grab a couple of highlighters, right? I three minimum, or write in different colored pens, or you can use post-it notes, three different colors. What do you like? What's, if you don't do it, it's an actual fire, right? So like, what's super important? Highlight that in whatever color, red, green, whatever color you want that super stands out. What do you need to do but doesn't have to be done, does not need your attention right now, or maybe you can delegate. And delegation, huge. And this is also where boundaries come in, right? Your kids can do things, your partner and spouse can do things, you can hire things out. And if you can do trades, lots of people are like, I can't hire anything, I don't have the money. That's fine, do trades, right?
Yeah.
With other moms. So brain dump everything. So what needs your attention right now? One color. What needs your attention in the near future, or potentially you can delegate, but you need to like it actually needs to get done. And then what are the things that you'd like to do but don't necessarily need to get done, right? Or you can do later. Um, so that's the first thing. And then taking the three things that you can do in the next 24 hours and just doing them. Hey, it's a whole like, can you make the, like, maybe it's a, you need to bake a pie for, or cookies or whatever for Christmas. Can you make the dough and throw it in the freezer in the next 24 hours? Great, do that, right? What are the things, because those wins trigger our brain to, when we do the thing, that we have a win, right? And so we stop the procrastination cycle, which is often also when we get overwhelmed, right? We procrastinate. So what are the things that you can do right now in the next 24 hours? And then sit down and really look at your calendar. If you use calendar, if you don't use a calendar, I suggest a calendar. You can do paper, pen and paper. You can do, Google Calendar. But put all of those things on that brain dump, put them somewhere, and just put a time on it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're tied to that time, but now it's out of your head, because we hold so much in our head. So just, put it somewhere so that you have it scheduled out to do. And then stop and breathe. Put your feet on the ground, close your eyes, and take 3 really deep breaths. Inhale for 5 seconds and hold it for 5 seconds, and exhale for 5 seconds. And that will immediately just calm your nervous system. And then you can face other things, you face challenges. And when we can remember to breathe that way, because we don't as a culture breathe very deep in the first place, we can remember to breathe that way anytime we're in that super stressful situation. If we can just remember to just put our feet on the ground and breathe, we're going to calm down immediately, and we react so much better to things. Well, we're not reactive, right? When we're not in a reactive state. And so those are really tangible things that I like to start with because they're even for people who are like, I'm not a planner, that's not, you're not planning. You're getting things out of your head and you're getting them into a space where you can actually approach them because you can't, it's the whole, you can't eat an elephant, right? How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You take the things that you can do right now that are super quick and just start getting them off your list and you don't have to think about them again. They're done. They're done until this time next year or until whatever, right? Um, yeah, those are my top three. But I love that question because the biggest takeaway from nobody takes anything else away from this podcast except for this. Breathe. Just 3 breaths and you can do it anywhere and it's free and it takes less than like it takes 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, what was one takeaway? I was gonna say the one takeaway that I like through this conversation is I forget, even when I'm talking sometimes, like when I'm passionate and I'm talking and like I'm with a client or I'm doing my group coaching or I'm just talking to like just somebody, I always forget, "Oh, Lauren, just breathe." Like when I'm like, that fiery, passionate, even, and it's
Yeah.
the same way. It's the same thing to my body if it is actually the opposite too. If it's like I get extremely triggered or something extremely like, oh crap, this just happened. Like what am I gonna do? And sometimes like I train my body so well that I pause because I'm like, I don't even know what's happening right now. Like I don't,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like that breathe. And especially when somebody throws something mean at you, or it's like, words coming at you, or it's like you walk in and being an empath, you just know, like you can
Mhm.
read the room and then you know who that person is that is a risk, especially if you know the problem is going to be your mother-in-law or your sister-in-law or your, brother-in-law, whoever, exactly like, I'm just going to separate myself from that and then
Yeah.
just breathe or not, or kind of, I always tell people when it's like they have to be, they want to be around the family because of the kids. Just when I always say the technique that I actually, another guest on the podcast had said is like, ask for clarity. If something comes at you mean, it's like, what did you mean by that? Did you mean to hurt my feelings? Because most of the time, these people that are doing this are not even self aware of what they're doing. So I
100%.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but it's like once they know what they're doing, it's like, are you doing it for that reason? Or are you doing it for that other reason? So yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
usually I have to breathe. I'm like, just breathe. So
Yeah.
breathe. So anybody listening, if something happens, breathe and count to 3.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can walk away if you need to.
I'm just going to add one other thing because you just brought the count to three. So there's a technique that's the 5-step technique, and it is right. Stop, breathe, which is grounding, right? And then
Yeah.
focus on one thing in the room. Like find one thing in the room that brings you some sort of like happiness or joy or calmness, and focus on that. And then really like try to stop that loop in your head, right? Like try to replace that really negative, like that person just hurt my feelings, that person said, all of the names.
Yeah.
With I'm here because I love my kids. I'm in this situation because I'm going to focus on their joy right now, right? So
Yeah.
really trying to reframe that moment, and sometimes you just don't even react. I have a family member that's like that. I had to be on a call the other day, and this particular person, I was not talking to that family member. I was talking to somebody else, but of course I was on speaker and kept interrupting. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to focus on the person that I'm having the conversation with, and I'm going to let the rest of it go because it doesn't, whatever, right? Like if you can get into that space where you're just like, you know what, that doesn't affect me. I'm here and I want to set the example for my kids that, yeah, no, it's not okay to be mean to somebody, but like I want to set the example for my kids that you don't have to react to people who treat you that way. Then, that's so really trying to remember the reason that you're in that situation.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's actually great advice because one thing that's very triggering to me is when people talk over people. Because I'm just like, are you even listening to that person that they're just your mind, or can you find a way to calm your mind? Or it's like, what, I'm just like, it's running through my mind. I'm like, gosh, why does she keep talking over her? Or like, that is one thing I'm just like, stop it. Because it's like, are you listening or you just want to hear yourself talk? No, you just want to hear yourself talk. Well, go talk to the mirror. I don't know. Mirror work is going to be great for you. Like that is going to be awesome for you. And it's just making humor about it. Cause I'm like, God, you're so rude. That's so rude.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So is there how can somebody because I know there are gonna be a lot of people resonating with this conversation. How can people get a hold of you? Is there how if they want to be in your world, is there I'll make also make sure that all of your links are in the description box if they're listening or they're watching on YouTube. But is there how do they get into your world?
Yeah, so I have a free Facebook group. I know everybody has a Facebook group. I waffle back and forth with it, but everybody's there. So I have a free Facebook group. It's the Productivity Parlor, and I'll give you all the links.
Yeah.
You can find me at the Boundaries Babe at, well, Steph underscore the Boundaries Babe on Instagram. I'm also there. I have a weekly newsletter that I said comes out. Oh, it's not really a newsletter. It's a weekly like tips. So it's super quick wins. The 5 under 5, a recipe of the week, just some really easy things that are specifically targeted towards busy moms. Um, and how else can they get in touch with me? That's probably the biggest ways. And then, of course, I have my membership. So, and that's Audacious, and it's really living your life out loud. I love empowering women, and I love having conversations like this, and really coming to a place where we can set a better example for our daughters so we can move into that world that's more equitable, because we still don't live in an equitable world. And that's really where my passion lies, is equality and inclusion. And women are still the largest population that is not
Yes. Love that.
equal. So
Yay, I love that. So go make sure you go follow her, you go get in her Facebook group. So thank you for joining us today on today's podcast with Stephanie. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, and leave a review and share with somebody that a mom that you think or just a woman that you think would gain value from listening. Stay tuned for more captivating conversations in the future. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. I will see you next time.